Albo's 100k housing pump. Let's have a look. Good evening, everyone. Florian here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your hashtag recession-proof instant coffee, and we're going to have a look at the fantastic new scheme that's now been launched by Labour, the housing deposit. You can get a house now with only a 5% deposit. Now, for those of you that are long-standing fans of the channel, can you imagine what this is going to do to house prices? Certainly, it is going to increase the ability for many Australians to get into homes. And frankly, I don't blame you. If this is giving you an opportunity to get into a market, to secure a home and secure a place you can live and hopefully retire in without being in rent, then I don't blame you. Not at all. But of course, this is pouring fuel onto one segment of the market. So the first movers are going to have the greatest benefit, and then it's going to filter through and increase the cost of all housing stock. Now, you'd think the first movers would be more than a little bit more than the instantaneous people who bought beforehand, but no, it seems to be that housing has pumped instantly from this news, from this scheme. 100 grand pump. So it's going to make it even harder for you to get into housing. My concern with this scheme is the shared equity component of some of the proposals of Labor. Now that's separate to the 5%. I'm really hoping that doesn't get in. But if you want to make housing more affordable, you need to increase supply. You need to reduce the tax burden on the component parts and the people doing fabricating and building the houses. You need to reduce government red tape and onerous requirements. Every year, it feels every year, but every few years you've got more and more changes to the building code. And these things all sound good. You've now got, you want to have disabled access to all the houses, bigger corridors to allow people to get through, larger bathrooms. Okay, fantastic. That sounds good. But rather than making that a requirement of every build, how about we give interest-free loans to people, or even pay for it, who are in need, that need those modifications? So rather than sweeping changes to all housing and increase the cost of all houses, we make changes on an ad hoc basis and make that choice as a civilization. But that doesn't seem to be how we're going now, because that's not going to be the good soundbite, is it? It's going to be, we need to provide this extra access. We need to increase the energy rating of our houses, make them even more efficient. Let's have a look at this article, guys. Let's have a look at this. So, the first home buyers scheme blasted for driving house prices up in the first 2 days. Now, I thought, this is a bit of BS, But I've to be honest, I've fallen off as a YouTuber. I've been just so busy for the last year, to be quite honest, last 2 years really, and I haven't really been keeping up with property prices as much as I have in the past. So I thought, we'll get good old SQM research, and we'll bring the website up here, and we'll just have a look at this, guys, and just this is their website here, and we can see what they've got here for house prices. You can see what I've highlighted here. This is Brisbane, my city that I'm living in. Beautiful Brisbane. You could probably hear the crickets in the background. It's a wonderful, beautiful evening right now as I'm recording. And let's have a look. Are we number 2? Oh, boy. Brisbane is now number 2. We're the poor cousin of Melbourne. But if you look at all houses with SQM's figures, the asking price of all houses is $1.303 million. Now, in Melbourne, all houses is $1.301 million. So we're just a tiny little bit better than Melbourne with our house prices, guys. Just that tiny little bit higher there. And let's look at Brisbane, because I'm selfish. Remember here, like 2019, this is a few years ago when we had the channel when the bushfires were just starting. I remember bitching about how expensive housing was back then, how unaffordable it was, how frustrating it was as someone who, starting a young family, not so young anymore, but trying to get into the housing market, the challenges that presents. And that's, it's took me some time to realize, well, you need to have two people earning a six-figure plus income. You need to be a $200,000 to $300,000 household to get into a house comfortably. And okay, that may seem a bit excessive, particularly when you think about what the average wage is, but you need to scale it back and think about just the cohort that's buying. Not the young kid that's working at Macca's, the two young professionals, one a tradie maybe, one a professional, usually in the medical field, that's the stereotype, that are coming together to buy a house. You ignore the pensioners, ignore the unemployed people, they're not the ones buying houses. And you look at those incomes and it is still 4 to 6 times what it was. But times have changed. We're not, because the argument is, back in my day it was only 4 times annual income to buy a house. But they always look at the individual person's income, not a household income. Now a household, you need to have 2 earners, guys. 2 earners, that's how it is. But if we look here, I mean, look at this, look at that, shooting right up there. No numbers are appearing, but we can see over here, we breached 1 million for all houses. 3 bedders, which I think is the best measure here for the average person, because most average people want a 3-bedroom house as their starter. You didn't in the past, but now, look at that, we're over 1 million now. 3-bedroom house, September 25, $1 million. There you go. So we can see housing is going up. In Brisbane, it's gone up. Look at Sydney, it's gone up. We'll look at Melbourne, it's gone up. We'll look at good old Perth. We're not forgetting you. Look at Perth, how it's skyrocketed. Shit. What about Adelaide? I was talking to a tradie from Adelaide before. Look at that climb. Look at Adelaide. It is just Adelaide used to be a cheaper place to buy. The whole joke, Adelaide in South Australia is like 20 years behind the rest of the country. Not anymore. Look at this. Look, 3-bedroom house, $984,000. That's... what are the wages like in South Australia and Adelaide compared to the East Coast? Are they still a little subdued? Because it's going to make shit all difference now when you're comparing house prices. You might take a salary hit if you can afford some money, afford a cheap, better house, more cost effective. Not anymore. What about Canberra? The civil service utopia. Yeah, it's still climbing. Look at a 3-bedroom there, 1.1. Look at Darwin. Even Darwin's going up. Darwin. It's kind of flat. What else do we have here? Hobart. Hobart, come on, good old Hobart. Oh, shit. Look at that. Okay, look at that climb. Look at that growth. Okay, remember, back here, 2010, 2018, we were still thinking these prices were insane. So, yeah, this is the thing. When you look at all these charts, just think about all the predictions for housing crashes that people have made. Is housing in a bubble? Or how much of our quality of life can people sacrifice? Or is it just going to be a 2-speed economy? You're going to have people who are in the housing sector and who aren't. So let's look at this. Labor's new first home buyer scheme has faced fierce backlash just days after its launch, with one critic claiming it has already driven up housing prices or house prices by $100,000. I mean, all of these schemes are going to drive house prices up. I would argue for the coalition's proposal to allow people to use a portion of their superannuation to get into housing. And people say it'll drive housing up. Everything is going to drive housing up. Everything you do will drive housing up. If you want to free up more income for people to allow them to buy a house, maybe you tax them differently. You reduce the tax rate. Remember, the coalition tried to do that, and every bloody journalist was arguing like they didn't understand simple mathematics, and we're explaining, look at how all these rich doctors and people on $300,000 are getting a huge tax cut, while all these people earning $40,000 are getting nothing. Or, poor Timmy here, who's only earning $18,000 a year, is not getting any tax cut. Can you believe that? Oh, down with the evil capitalists. If you don't realize that, that's the tax-free threshold. So just 2 days after it was implemented, Labor's signature first home buyer scheme has been blasted for driving house prices up practically overnight. The scheme came into effect on Wednesday, allowing first home buyers to purchase a property with a 5% deposit as opposed to the usual 20%. And this is the problem. You've got to save a deposit now, which is so large, it just takes you so long to get into it. And remember, these days, you need the income of 2 people to get a deposit because, well, that's the standard household model now, 2 people. Let's hope they don't bloody well go on polyamorous relationships and you have 3 or 4 people coming together to buy a house. It's going to happen one day. And you've also got 10% of your wages garnished straight away, taken away, and locked up so the super funds can play with it. Sure, you might get an advantage to it later in life, but it's going to suck when you had to delay buying a house by how long? Here's a question for you. Here's something to think about. What do you think the opportunity cost is of saving the money in super and missing out on, 5 to 10 years into buying a house? What do you think's worse? The capital appreciation of having, that money in your superannuation, paying all those fees, and sure you're getting a return, or getting into the housing market a decade earlier. So, eligible buyers can now avoid paying costly lenders' mortgage insurance, with the government acting as guarantor for 15% of the loan. Now, here's the question: why do we have lenders' mortgage insurance in Australia? You know what? Let's bring up my co-pilot and let's ask. Why do we have lenders? Because it's not protecting the buyer, the person borrowing the money. It's protecting the bank. Why do we have this? Why can't banks opt not to do it and give you another deal? Maybe they want to take more risk in Australia. Come on, chat or co-pilot, which is ChatGPT. Okay, let's have a look at it here. So, LMI exists in Australia primarily to protect lenders, not borrowers. When a borrower takes out a home loan with a deposit smaller than 20% of the property's value, here's why it's used. When a borrower has a small deposit, typically less than 20%, the lender is taking on more risk. If the borrower defaults and the property is sold for less, come on. Isn't that the... So, you think about how much of our system here in Australia is set up to protect the bloody banks. It really is frustrating, isn't it? It enables borrowers to enter the market sooner. Oh, it's a good thing for you. It supports the financial system stability. That you'll see there's a lot of rules and regulations we have in place because Australians don't want a free market. They want a stable market. Just remember that. LMI is usually provided by specialist insurers like Genworth or QBE. The premium is either paid upfront or capitalised into the loan. Okay, who pays for it? Alternatives: save a 20%, get a guarantor loan, a government scheme. So why does this exist? Oh, is LMI mandatory? Come on. So yes, it's mandatory. Yep. Exceptions. Okay. Who decides? It's not government imposed, but rather a lender imposed requirement. Most banks and lenders in Australia follow this guideline to manage their risk exposure. Doesn't this seem like collusion? Why don't we have banks that don't do this? It's a fair question. If it's lender imposed, shouldn't the market have other banks coming in and not playing ball like this, offering to waive that fee? Let me know in the comments, guys, if you've got any insight into that. It's definitely something. This has perked my interest. It might be worth investigating a little bit further. So there you go. See, another thing to protect the banks, for the good of the banks. So the government that forces you to pay a huge chunk of tax, that forces you to lock your money away in superannuation, that taxes you every time you have a beer. I got to tell you this one. I went to a local hotel the other day. Took the kids out because we've got birthdays this week. We bank the birthdays up. If I've got 2 in a week, it's cost effective. So I took them out to get some Lego at Kmart. Then I thought, okay, let's go out for dinner. And I went to a hotel here, Callanvale Hotel, near us, not too far. Quite nice little place, And sat down there. The kids got a kids meal, and they got a free token for the arcade. They loved it. They had a great night. This is spontaneous. Let's go out. So they had Lego, dinner with Dad out, and arcade. We all got to play games. But I thought, what? I'll have a beer. I'll have a Heineken. I haven't had one in forever. And you know how much that cost? Like $14 for one beer. One beer. When I go into boomer mode and I tell the waitresses or the barman, when I was at uni, back in my day, you could get a shot for $1. And they look at me like I'm nuts. Oh, boy. Anyway, well, there's not how much of that is tax. But the sin tax, because I'm daring to have a relaxing beer and celebrate my children's birthday. That's more because they got a bigger Lego set and a little Lego set. The beer was more than the smaller Lego set. So, despite being a staple of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's re-election campaign, various economists, senators and voters have criticised the policy for failing to tackle the central issue of housing crisis supply. You know what, let me just bring up the ABS building approvals, because, guys, it's not Building Approvals Australia, ABS. Here we go. We got it from their website. Let's look at the chart here. We can see. I mean, okay, there you go. Dwelling units approved. Okay, look, we're not there at what was that scheme called? I don't even remember that scheme anymore. Where they could the government threw money during the pandemic. You know what I mean? They had a scheme there where if you spend 15 grand, you get 150 grand. And the government got it all back in GST anyway, so it was a nice, beautiful circle for them to overheat the housing sector. And all these builders took on contracts, and we had inflation, but their contracts didn't allow for excessive or insane inflation. They were fixed price, so they all went under. And then we've had a whole series on YouTube here about the housing apocalypse, or the construction apocalypse, where builders are going bust left, right, and centre. A lot of these are mum and dad builders. Yeah, remember that? There you go, 20,000 houses. Now, what are we sitting at? 17 in June 25, August 15,000. We look at the trend there. Yeah, okay. So we're never going to hit the numbers that they're proposing they want to build, because housing is complicated, everyone. Housing takes a long time to build. And the rules and the legislation, it's just becoming more onerous every year. It's crazy. It really is crazy. We need to scale back. One argument I would make is make housing simpler. Scale back the requirements that people need to do. I'd abandon all of the energy efficiency requirements. Make those all individual choices on the person buying the house. But that's not what we want. We want to have nice, efficient houses. So if people choose to put air conditioning in, it'll save them a bit of money. Be better for the environment. But then again, it adds for years that people need to save a deposit to get into a house. What's the opportunity cost of that? A whole bunch of Australians that are renting for their whole lives. So, yeah. I agree supply needs to be addressed. I don't know if the government can easily deal with it, because you have federal, state, and local councils all together. You've got the whole not in my backyard crowd. You've got land availability. Now, I know everyone thinks Australia is a huge country, but we only want to live in a few parts of the nation, guys. Brisbane, Melbourne, and Sydney. That's more than majority of the people live here. So, there you go. Look at this, an update. There you go. Someone shared it. 800,000 to 910. Nearly $1 million. But that's only one tweet. Green Senator Barbara Pocock. What? Is she related to the other Pocock? Said the scheme would add a staggering $55 billion or 0.5% overall to the house prices over the next 6 years, according to ABS data. Increasing housing demand without dealing with the acute housing supply issue in this country just means more expensive homes, Ms. Pocock said. Critics point out that beneficiaries of the scheme will need to take out a 95% mortgage, possibly leading to financial instability and stress for first home buyers. I don't really agree with that statement. I know everyone's playing up the whole, they'll be borrowing too much, they'll get into trouble. We've got so many bloody rules and regulations in this country. You'll have 3% buffers in people assessing their ability to pay the mortgage. It's not like in America where they were handing out mortgages to people where they know you couldn't pay it with insane repayment terms and conditions, purely based on ideological and racial reasons. It was a complete and utter disaster. Here, the challenge is not meeting your mortgage repayments. Okay? Your rent is probably more than the mortgage on a lot of houses. Here in Brisbane, I was watching a video. A Brisbane guy, age blocked. He's an older dude who's just pissed off really about working in the IT sector as an older dude. Check out his channel if you haven't. And he did a video, just released it tonight. I watched it before I watched this one, where he discussed moving to a regional area in Queensland for cheaper rent. But now the rents out there are getting up to $600 a week. And he's telling the guy who's interviewing him that's close to 70% of his bloody income. So, for a lot of people, it might be cheaper buying a house than it is or paying for the mortgage than it is to rent. Because the challenge to get into a house is not the repayments. It is the deposit. And it's because we have all these rules in place to protect the banks. We know this will drive up house prices, and we know this will encourage people to buy houses they can't afford. It's reckless, Miss Pocock said. No, well, if they can afford the repayments, they can afford the houses. She's obviously from a different generation, okay? She's obviously got into the market. I've known nothing about this woman. I'm just basing it on how old I assume she looks. Got into the market at a cheaper time. Probably she didn't have the forced savings that we have these days, and could get a deposit faster and easier. This is what they don't get. The challenge is the deposit. It's not making the mortgage repayments. Sure, if you go borrow too high, if you push yourself too far, you're going to have to do without. Little Timmy's not going to be able to go to the nice private school. You may not be able to do swimming lessons. It's further proof that this government is working for wealthy property investors and banks and not first home buyers. Can a government work for first home buyers? If the government was working for first home buyers and allowed people maybe in that age demographic when they're looking at buying their houses to pay substantially lower taxes, the Greens would be the first one bitching and moaning that it's unfair and not equitable. Maybe if we looked at reducing government programs to reduce the burden on the average citizen, so they'd have more of their own money in their pocket, the Greens would be the first one bitching and moaning about that. The Greens are pushing us for renewable energy. It's not cheaper. It's going to cost more. You got nutcases in that party that even want to put the price of eggs more expensive. So, independent economist Saul S. Lake agreed the policy was unlikely to meaningfully improve Australia's housing market. It's not about improving the market. It's about winning elections. Winning elections, you've got a whole bunch of people that are pissed off that they can't get into houses. But you've also got a whole bunch of voters that own houses and investors that don't want to see their wealth decline, even if it's perceived. So what do? You've got to make a scheme to keep them all happy. And what will that do to house prices? It'll shoot it up. The people that will benefit from this scheme are the people who can afford to borrow more, but who haven't had yet enough time to save up a traditionally required deposit of 20%. That's not a huge number of people, Mr. S. Lake told Newswire. No, but it doesn't matter. It just has to look like they're doing something for the housing. People who will be helped by the scheme are people who would probably be able to afford a home or a flat anyway. I don't know. I don't know, mate. I don't think so. You've got to realize that it's the opportunity cost of not getting into. Well, of course he knows about that. He's an economist. The opportunity cost of not getting into the market faster. They won't be able to get it sooner because they can service the mortgage that's now 95% of purchase prices. Yeah. He was surprised that house prices would jump so immediately in response to the scheme, but said it was certainly possible. I think it may just be one person finding it on Twitter. It could be. Prospective sellers know that prospective buyers can now borrow more money. And that means in a supply-constrained market, which almost all Australian markets have been for a very long time, is that people spend more on housing than they would otherwise, and prices go up. The Prime Minister has been contacted for comment. So there we go. Let's have a bit of a chat about this one, eh? So Albo's scheme has pumped up housing already by 100 grand. What do you reckon, everyone? I can't see housing crashing in Australia. I can't see it happening. I know people want it. People think we're in a bubble. People are hoping for it. Rachel, I was talking to her. She says we need to stop all foreign investment, like what happened during COVID lockdowns. You know, that affected house prices. By how much? 20%? Then people jumped in. There's huge demand in Australia for housing. I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. What will be interesting to see when we have this intergenerational wealth transfer as the boomers start to move on. You can't take your houses with you. You can't take your wealth with you. What I'm concerned about is that we'll see talk of a death tax, because you'll have a growing inequality and growing unrest between different groups here in Australia. You have a whole bunch of people wanting to get a slice of that, wanting to get their greedy mitts on it. And I've got a series planned to tax, and you'll be shocked at what they plan to tax, everyone. Remember the plans to tax bedrooms? Spare bedrooms? I wonder. I mean, as I've said in the past, we really need a population of more individual homeowners. That's a goal we should all aspire to. Life is a lot easier when you retire, even on the pension, if you own your own home as opposed to renting. But the cynic in me thinks, is there method to this madness? Do you want a population working frantically just to get into a home, just to service a mortgage? You're more subdued, more well-behaved, less rebellious. You've got good, well-behaved economic units then. You tell me. I would love to see some innovation in housing, but, well, we need to make it easier to build them. We need to reduce the red tape, scale right back. If you look at the designs that they had years ago, houses that people would buy or build, what people would do, which you can't even do now, you just build the garage. You'd build the garage, put a dining and a shower in there, and you'd live in that till you got enough money to build the rest of the house. And often you build it bit by bit, or you'd own a build it. Could you imagine that happening these days? You've got all these developments that have rules stopping that. Why do you think you have people who are living in the tiny homes? Because they want to get around all the rules. So, maybe we need to look at the past and learn some valuable lessons. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions on how to solve the housing crisis. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.